We're right with you. The Morning Majority, 5 to 9 on 630 WMAL.
8:37 on WMAL. Brian Eben, Michael Steele, former head of the RNC, Maryland Lieutenant Governor in the House this morning. We're joined now by Dr. Matthew Levitt with the Washington Institute for Near Policy and a former intelligence analyst at the U.S. Department of Treasury, following the money, as we always do in these situations. Dr. Levitt, good to have you this morning. What have you found out, or what do you think now that we found bin Laden hiding out in this compound, and how he was able to get money, or how Al-Qaeda was able to get money in and out from that compound, and for essentially, pulling off some terror attacks?
What we're finding out is that they've become more attuned to the fact that we listen in on the right telephones and we follow the right email. And so he went old school and was using couriers not only to deliver messages. Reportedly, people would then drive 90 or 100 miles before sending an email or making a phone call, but also to deliver money. He had an escape plan. He reportedly had 500 euros sewn into his clothing for an escape. But the main thing here is that this is the beginning of an operation, not the end of an operation. The material that they found in his compound could have all kinds of leads, operational leads for further plots, leads about where his deputy, Ayman al-Zawahiri, is, and of course leads about the money, not only how he was funded and how this particular compound was purchased and who bought the groceries and delivered them, but also about, how the rest of the Al-Qaeda core at a minimum is being funded.
Now, I'm just curious as to where they came up with the money, or is this something that we're investigating, to buy a house in Pakistan, to build a house, to pay these guys to construct this house that is said to be $1 million. Maybe it's not $1 million. Maybe it's $250,000. Maybe it's $500,000 or whatever. But I assume that they did a lot of this in cash, and I'm wondering if that's something that we're looking at right away. Is where did they get this cash? Follow that money trail.
Without question. In the Office of Intelligence and Analysis Treasury, where I used to work, the rest of the intelligence community, you can be sure, is following this very, very closely, putting in very long hours. What they may find is that it wasn't Al-Qaeda that actually paid for it, but it was some type of sympathizer, some guy who might not have even been on the Al-Qaeda radar, and that it wasn't cash that was being delivered, but other types of material support, that as someone's contribution, they weren't giving money, but they delivered groceries, or they would allow someone use of their house. Remains to be seen if bin Laden owned this house, some other Al-Qaeda guy, or just some sympathizer that maybe we didn't know about before. The good news is we've busted a huge network. We've shaken the tree, and the acorns that are falling fast and hard. The leads that are being developed are going to be very tangible, and I expect I have good optimism and reason to believe that this is going to be the first in a series of successes, not the last.
Following the money trail, Doc, how much of Osama's own dollars, euros or whatever, was spent in building this compound or financing Al-Qaeda, particularly after his family, kind of cut him off? How much did he actually have himself? Do we have any sense of that?
We don't have any sense of actual figures. Our sense is that he had very, very little. And while the compound, is large, if you look at the pictures and the videos that were released, he doesn't seem he was living in the lap of luxury, wood-paneled rooms and plush leather sofas. The understanding we have now, which is contrary to what we understood shortly after 9/11, is that bin Laden's family fortune, his personal piece of it, ran out pretty quick. By the time he had left Sudan in the mid-90s, much of his personal fortune was gone, and he was not personally funding the organization anymore. They had businesses, they had supporters. Increasingly now we see terrorists resorting to crime, but not him himself. The most interesting today is that whereas just before and after 9/11, the Al-Qaeda core would send money to groups and operatives in the periphery saying, here's some seed money, go do your operation, your little bombing, while we plan our next spectacular like a 9/11, you don't see that anymore. In fact, you see a reverse directional flow increasingly, where small-scale operatives and networks on the periphery in Europe and Asia, elsewhere, in the Gulf, engage in crime to raise money for themselves, and then often bring some of that money back to the core to help them get by, whether it's for their propaganda expenses, for their living expenses. And while any given terrorist attack is relatively inexpensive, the expense of maintaining the organization is very expensive. Paying for salaries, paying for the families. And when we when the U.S. military recovered documents from Sinjar in Iraq, we called them the Sinjar documents, one of the things we learned is that Al-Qaeda in Iraq's biggest expense, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, was taking care of the families of their operatives. You don't do that, you're not going to get operatives.
Is it possible that in the computer records that we took out of this compound that there is essentially a donor list or bank accounts, or are there worried Arabs somewhere, maybe in Saudi Arabia or Yemen, or people maybe even within the Pakistani government who are concerned that their name or number is going to wind up on one of these documents that we can trace money, financing back to them?
Like some of the $18 billion we spent in Pakistan,
right.
By the way.
Well, the good news is there are a lot of people who are very scared right now. I think anybody who has ever done anything with or on behalf of Al-Qaeda and its affiliates has to be having, a very hard time, very now worrying just that. We don't know, of course. And it shouldn't be out in the public domain yet. What we find there, the intelligence community, I'm sure, I know from my own experience in the past, is making tremendous headway with that material, and again, I think they'll have operational leads that will lead to other successes. Some we may hear about, some we won't. But there is precedent. In the 1990s, Bosnian authorities raided a charity that has since been tied to Al-Qaeda, the Benevolence International Foundation office in Sarajevo, which parenthetically had an office here in Chicago too. And when they raided that office, they found all kinds of historical documents about the early founding of Al-Qaeda, and they found there a document that has been referred to as the Golden Chain, because at one point, I think it was bin Laden, someone in the document refers to a list of wealthy donors who he describes as the Golden Chain, the people that can be relied upon to give money. We believe that Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula and the Al-Qaeda core in particular still rely primarily on wealthy donors from the Gulf. Other elements like Al-Qaeda in North Africa, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, do a lot of kidnapping and fund themselves that way. But there is precedent, and whether or not we'll find a golden chain type of document in bin Laden's compound remains to be seen.
Right.
We believed he wasn't all that operational. Now we're hearing that maybe he was more operational than we thought. So all the better.
All right, good stuff.
The potential for those documents.
Thanks for joining us, Dr. Levitt. We appreciate it as always. Dr. Matthew Levitt, with the Washington Institute for Near Policy, also used to work in the Treasury Department and following the money in the terrorism cases.